Why are so many American men numb? Why are so many American men struggling with apathy? Why do we have record highs of anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse? And alcohol is a huge, huge player in that whole equation.
Yeah.
So would love to hear kind of how that started for you and then how you were able to kind of get into that recovery process.
Yeah, it is a long journey.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Tough Podcast. I am your host, Dustin Defenderfer, and I'm so glad that you are here. It is our goal to bring you an inspiring guest every single week that helps you with that mental toughness, that mental fitness, so that you can add some tools to that mindset toolbox so that you can stay dangerous. If you are a first-time listener to this show, quickly, I want to make sure you know, just by being a listener of this podcast, you do get 6 weeks of free Mountain Tough. That's Mountain Tough Plus, the app. All of our physical, mental, spiritual, nutritional training is there. To take advantage of that offer, just go to mountaintough.com, click Start Free Trial, and enter the code MOUNTAINPOD. That's MTNPOD, all caps, all one word. That is going to get you going 6 weeks for free. Shifting gears now to today's episode. Today's episode is one I've been looking forward to because we're sitting down with a man whose journey embodies the Mountain Tough principles: grit, redemption, discipline, and a calling bigger than himself. Keith Sivera is the new CEO at Mountain Ops. And Mountain Ops, as you know, is one of the most influential brands in Western hunting and backcountry performance. But his story is so much bigger than that. We're going to get into that today. We're going to get into his story from childhood to alcoholism to a sobriety recovery story leading him into fitness, into a transformation, into his CEO seat that he is in at today. So please stand by for my conversation with Keith Sivera. I wanted to start in a lens looking and kind of chatting about your sobriety journey.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Mountain Tough and the podcast specifically, when we started our show, we were like, hey, there are a lot of great fitness podcasts out there, and we don't want to compete in that red ocean. There are a lot of great hunting podcasts out there, and we don't necessarily want to compete in that red ocean. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to create conversations around mindset, but specifically from a non-academic view. There were a couple great academic mental toughness podcasts out there. But what I really wanted to do when we created this a few years ago was kind of like, let's bring on awesome people and have really inspiring conversations about their mindset. And maybe there'll be some tips, tools, and tactics that listeners can pull out of that and apply to their own lives. But it's going to come from real people, not from an academic lens. And just like you were just chatting about with like a transformation fitness story, the same thing is like, wow, I relate to what that guy's saying. I relate to his life experience. And so it's a lot more tangible. And so that's what we've been doing the last couple of years is really kind of unpacking people's mental health, mental tools, mental fitness, so that a listener out there can think about how they could practically apply that to their own lives. And I know that when you chatted on some recent podcasts, I've heard you share your story of sobriety, and I would love to chat about that because it is such a major thing that we've been talking about as a Mountain Tough community. From a larger context, we've been talking about why are so many American men numb? Why are so many American men struggling with apathy? Why do we have record highs of anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse? and alcohol is a huge player in that whole equation.
Yeah.
So would love to hear kind of how that started for you, and then how you were able to kind of get into that recovery process.
Yeah. And I was actually just listening to one of your podcasts with a guest talking about his sobriety journey. And, at the time of the recording, it was still obviously very raw for him. And I love stories like that because it brings me back to that sobriety. And, it is a long journey that starts like anything with just a couple steps in the right direction. And I was really fortunate to find the program swiftly when I needed it. But, my experience with substances, particularly alcohol, is what I had a problem with, goes way back. I was kind of born into it. If there's some sort of genetic thing that's passed on, that thing is in my family. But I also grew up in a household where my father ran a liquor distributor out of the Boston area. So it was a thing that was in my life from a very early age, just, from subtle things. Like we always had tons of beer t-shirts, and, growing up in the high school, I had really cool like neon beer signs. And so like this alcohol culture was something I was just born into and had a lot of time in. My first job that I had probably at the age of 14 or 15, I don't know, my dad used to drop me off at work, was working in a liquor store, and I worked there for a very long time, and into college, and used to bartend. And then I got a job in the liquor industry upon graduating from college, where I was promoting spirits in the Providence, Rhode Island market. And so it was fun at those times. I had a robust college experience in enjoying those things, but it was never for me like the same experiences as those around me. Often I always felt like, one, I could tolerate alcohol more, or at least I thought so. So I was like an enabler for a lot of people. I liked trying to keep people to keep up with me. And it was, and I've heard that, when you're alone in it, it's where the wheels really fall off. And I did get to that point, but for a long time as like an enabler, it was fun for me. And I made it to a point fun for others because I would bring us together, And so for me, I think growing up as a child, I never fully fit in. And when I started finding alcohol, it helps me find a way to fit in where I couldn't before. It made social interactions easier for me, or so I thought. I thought it gave me more confidence. I thought it made me feel more at ease. It was that social lubricant. So that became a lot of my identity, was being that guy that had the party going on, or was connected and always had booze, especially underage. I always had a easy access to alcohol, and it just kind of consumed me. It became my identity. It was how I earned a living. It was what I did with my free time. And I worked in what they call on-premise, which is bars, nightclubs, restaurants, and sporting venues. So it was, from the outside, it looked awesome, right? Like I had tickets to all the games and concerts. I was, could get into all the cool spots. Always had a table and had a nice company card that allowed me to buy drinks and make sure that our products were flowing. And part of my job, oddly enough, was to like go hook up bartenders and like be that guy that had the good connections. So it was like super fun for a young guy getting out of college. But it was pretty quickly that like I realized I was in over my head. I started getting into trouble. I ended up getting in a really bad car accident that was alcohol related. I ended up losing that job, which for me was really devastating. And I think a lot of shame kicked in because that job was something that my dad helped me get through his connections. And so I felt like I really let him down. And so then I had this like industry that I was a part of that really enabled this excessive use of alcohol that I had. It made it feel normal because I was around it so much, so it didn't seem abnormal. I also had access to it, so it wasn't prohibiting me from paying my bills or doing these other things, and it wasn't prohibiting me from being effective in my job because a lot of my job was to be out doing that. So it was a bizarre circumstance for an alcoholic where I was actually the number one rep in my division for the year. And it was just me going out to bars, essentially, right? Like we sold more product and help promote it. And there was a job to it, but most of it was like, it was the hang, and it was being out there and getting the word out. And so like, it was easy to get really sucked into that lifestyle because the job promoted it and kind of hid a lot of the cracks that were forming. And when I lost that job, you had that same desire within me to consume, but all of a sudden, now the company card's gone. I don't have access to those places like I did. And when you're not the guy coming in to run the promotions and do all these things, those relationships dry up pretty quickly because it wasn't about you. It was about the access you had to helping their business. And so for me, when I transitioned into this kind of lonelier experience with alcohol, and there is this, I took a note of something that was said in that podcast that really resonated with me when he said, what did he say? It was, the elimination of judgment was really powerful for me as well, where like, I didn't have to feel like I was being judged for my behavior, or I wasn't really responsible almost for that behavior. And it just kept slipping me down the slope. And then at one point, I remember having this conversation with myself of like this acceptance of being like this loser, where I was struggling to keep a job. I was struggling in my social interactions because my drinking had really spiraled out of control. So in an effort to eliminate judgment, you surround yourself with other like-minded people. And at this point, they didn't have the best mindset, right? We're not talking about, guys that are supporting you with your goals in life to help you go be a better man, right? These were guys that just wanted what I wanted to, which was more enabling circumstances to kind of drown in our addiction together, because misery loves company. And when you're around others that, have a pretty low bottom, you don't feel as uncomfortable versus like I've had those experiences when you're kind of in the depths of that and you're around kind of normal people. And a lot of times that happens because you stay up throughout the whole night, and I remember being out like, on my front porch, whatever, smoking cigarettes at like 6 a.m. as the sun's coming up, and I haven't been to bed in a day or two. And you're watching normal people like, get their kids off to school and they're going to work, and you're just in this totally bizarre world, and you become comfortable in it. And that's when it gets really scary. I think for a lot of people, when they experience those moments, it's like, ooh, that was a bad night, right? Where when that becomes your norm, you get to a really dangerous spot. And I was really fortunate, by the grace of God, I found Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 25, and I'm 20 years sober now. And for me, when I walked into those rooms, it was like permission to move on. It was like lifted off my shoulders a little bit. I didn't feel the burden anymore. It was, letting go and letting God. It was not trying to steer everything. Because when I looked at when I was in control, I'm over here and I did not want to be over here. And when I let go and listened to others and through their experience, strength, and hope, kind of followed their path, things immediately got better for me in so many ways. So it was very black and white. And I'm extremely blessed to have experienced that, because a lot of people struggle with the in and out of it all. And for me, it was so black and white that I didn't want to be where I was. And there was a better way. And I knew that I don't think those doors open that often, and it was open and I was going to run through it. And I had a lot of support from my family, which was really helpful because I had some experience with it. But they were also, supportive in the sense that they just wanted to help me get back on my feet and point me in the right direction. And they were my biggest cheerleaders. And that's what I needed at that time. And it was off to the races. I mean, I could finally hold my head up high. There were little things like driving around when you realize like, if a police officer pulls up behind me, I have nothing to worry about. It was like little things like that most people don't fear those things at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, right? Like all of a sudden you're not looking over your shoulder anymore, and that's sort of freeing feeling. And then also physically, that was when I started working out. At this point, I wouldn't say like massively overweight, but I was quite overweight. I mean, at the time I was almost 230 pounds, and it wasn't from exercise. And I'm not like a super tall guy. I'm just shy of 6 feet. So it was a good amount of weight for someone that wasn't very active. And I replaced kind of that habit of going out to the bar with, being like under the bar at the gym. And man, I was bit by that bug real quick. And for me, it was initially just about losing weight. I wanted to be smaller because I people used to call me big guy, and I was like, I don't get it. I'm not like tall. Why was everybody calling me big guy? It's like I couldn't see what I was doing to myself. physically.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't want to be the big guy anymore. I wanted to just like be the small guy. And so I just did cardio and lost all this weight. And it was around 70 pounds or so, I think, that I'd lost at that time.
Wow.
But then I got bit by the bug of lifting, and I really started to get into supplementation and get my nutrition focused. And then it really opened my eyes and gave like those idle hands that I had in recovery something to sink into. You know, I had
Mm.
content to consume and I had things to learn, and it kept my brain busy. Because for me, I have, I don't know, a very active inner dialogue that's always going on. And I think the booze drowned it out for me a lot of the time, you know,
Yeah.
and pushed it to the side. And then when I got sober, it was loud and in my face, and I couldn't tune it out like I had in the past with these things that were just numbing me. And so then I had to replace it with something, and I found it. And then for me, it was, okay, this is cool. Like I'm into this. I'm seeing these positive changes in my body and how I feel about myself, my confidence level, all these things. But how do I do this, you know, for a living in some ways, kind of where I started to go, because I was spending so much time in my free time reading, consuming content about how to lift or what to eat and why to eat and all these things. And then I was like, well, how can I get involved in this industry? And I was really fortunate to find a path uh, to bodybuilding.com, which was the site that actually helped me lose all the weight and gave me the programming and did so much. And next thing you know, I'm moving to Boise, Idaho from New York City to go pursue this kind of silly dream. And it worked out really well for me. And all along the way, this is like reinforcing my sobriety. Um,
Mm.
because
All
like
these
it's like
positives.
every day I get further away from where I was, I'm getting closer to where I thought I wanted to be. And so it was just like for me so black and white. And I would go to meetings a lot in the beginning, AA meetings, and I kept hearing about these guys that would have, you know, a year or 2 years or however many years, and then they would go back out there, and all the bad things that, you know, you put off kind of were waiting for you. And that was this huge fear for me. Like I never had a DUI, I've never been arrested, you know, I avoided a lot of really tough stuff, and I'm fortunate for that. But I knew it was like out there doing push-ups in the parking lot just waiting for me, because I saw it happen to
Mm.
other guys. So you know, I started working with some guys to not necessarily sponsor. I never felt really comfortable with that, but like helping people get to meetings, you know, just kind of showing them some of the stuff that I did. And I found that to be really fulfilling, and it kept me accountable. And then I started to really learn about this layer of accountability that I really use in my daily life for a lot of things. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
tough when you're isolated like that. You know, your drinking can get really out of control because you're isolating and nobody really sees it, you know. But when you put it out there, and it was hard to find that balance as a younger man to put it out there. But once I started putting it out there and letting people know, like, I don't drink, here's why. I was embarrassed of it at first, but then all of a sudden I realized it like kept me accountable, because it was like, okay, well, now all these people know I don't drink. So one, they're not going to offer me drinks, which is a good thing. But two, like, if I go and have a drink and they see that, they're going to be like, whoa, like people get pretty protective of that, you know, once you let them
Yeah.
into that world. So all of a sudden I found I was like, man, the more accountable I am to these goals by putting them out there, it's almost like easier to stay on track. And I started doing that with my fitness, and, you know, putting these little things out there with whether it was my training partners or just people, like, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then there was this momentum that happened. And it's something that's really cool about what you all have built, is, you know, not just the path on the things to do physically, because that's part of it, right? Is how do I go and put my body through the ringer to make the changes that I want to have in life, whether it's to lose weight or build muscle or you know, be more dangerous or be more durable or whatever it might be. Um, when you align that with all the other pieces, you know, the spirituality piece of it, the community of it, connecting with other like-minded individuals that have goals that you can kind of
Mm.
align with. Because so often many of us going through that are doing it alone. You know, you might have a family that's not supporting of those goals. They're not inhibiting you, but they're not necessarily doing it as well. Maybe your peer circle isn't doing those things either, so they're kind of pulling you away from your goals. So I think it's really important to find that layer of accountability and some like-minded individuals, and I think you guys are building something really beautiful to help people accomplish that. And the workouts that you put together and the programming is top notch and extremely challenging. And I think puts people through um, different circumstances that test them mentally and
Mm-hmm.
physically, and then when you pair that in with the community and spirituality of it all, you really do build better humans. And so it's cool what you guys are doing over there.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that story of your journey through sobriety. And it really made me wonder, and I mean, congrats on 20 years, dude. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And, we've had a lot of close friends and family go through the battle of addiction. What do you think leads to AA's model being quite successful? I know it's obviously not 100%, but I know it is the model that is transforming the most lives, and it has been around for a long time and continues to be extremely powerful without that model really changing in the last 50 years. But what are the components going on in AA that's making it effective?
I think it's different for everybody. So I'll just kind of speak for my experience with it, but I'm sure it resonates for a lot of others that are in the program, where so much of it is about the experience, strength, and hope of others as this thing to lean on in this very challenging puzzle that you're solving that's different for every individual. We all have different reasons on why we found ourselves in the depths of alcoholism. We all have different reasons on why we want to get out of that and the catalyst to help us get out of that. But then we all find ourselves in this room often. And it's a motley crew of people, it's alcoholism doesn't care how old you are, what your gender is, or what your, beliefs are. It doesn't matter, right? So you end up in this group of people that is diverse. And I think that's a good thing, because you come in there and you can see a little bit of something in everybody that reminds you of yourself as they share their stories. And so for me, it was seeing other men that overcame this and were happy. It was like as simple as that to start. I was like, gosh, these guys they know something that I don't. And I want to know what they know, because these guys seem really happy. They seem confident. They're sharing these stories of really dark times with a smile on their face, because they're on the other side of it. And at the time, I was still coming out of it, right? So there's that shame. And then when you start sharing those pieces of your own story in that group, with others. And kind of like we were talking about, the elimination of judgment can get you into trouble. The elimination of judgment in that environment allowed me to feel honest, I think, for the first time in a long time. Because for me, when I was in the depths of that, you're lying to everybody, yourself included. You're lying
Mm.
to your family and your friends, and you're trying to hide things. And um, you can't keep it all straight, right? So then you're in this program, and all of a sudden this brutal honesty is welcomed, encouraged, and it's really the path in which gets you to the other side of where you're trying to go. And it was freeing. And so I think for me, that was a big piece of what was effective about it, was that, like, I wasn't being judged negatively. I was surrounded by other, you know, crazy people that were very similar to me in a lot of ways, even though we didn't look the same or the same age. I found something in everybody that I could look up to or relate to, even though we came from all different backgrounds and had different experiences. Even with our alcoholism, some people's version was way more extreme, and I was fortunate that mine wasn't that extreme, right? Like, my low wasn't as low as it could have been, and I'm really grateful for that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think for me, going to those meetings, selfishly at times, I'd hear those stories about the guys that would go back out and what happened, and it just reinforced to me, like, I don't want to come back in here and have to get my day one chip again. I don't want to let everybody down that helped me get to this point. I didn't want to let my parents down, my friends down, that support group down, because they were really, cheering for me to win. And so I just had this momentum with it, and I think staying connected to it reminded me, um, that I have this thing out there in the parking lot doing push-ups, just waiting for me to challenge it. And
Mm.
the further away in times that I did get away from meetings, it was like all of a sudden you start to desensitize a little bit to the things you need to watch out for. Because for me, it wasn't really, there was no, I wasn't compelled to drink anymore because it was black and white. But like, you still have to work on your thinking, your ways of interacting with yourself and with others, and how you process information and how you handle challenges. Right now, all of a sudden, you don't have this coping mechanism that you used to have. You have to face it all in a different way. So the group then became that for me, is like learning how to navigate life now, not just
Mm.
how do I not, go drink, but how do I actually thrive, for myself and for others without this thing that was holding me back, that I also romanticized so much, that I thought I needed it and loved it, and it didn't care about me at all, but
Mm.
these people did. So then it was like, okay, well, this seems like the thing to lean into. So for me, it was the community of it, to not feel so alone. I think for so long in my life, growing up as an only child and not always fitting in, I felt alone a lot. And then I found this identity in alcohol that brought me closer, in some regard, to others, because it was this doorway into this thing that I couldn't handle. But it was like I wasn't alone. And then I took that out, and then here I was alone again. Um, but I had a new outlet to go to that was more constructive. And then I also found that not just in the rooms of AA, but kind of in the walls of the gym too. I found my community, even if it wasn't that I was doing a group workout or hanging out with people from the gym. I knew, like, I had a safe space that I could go to and
Mm.
work on myself and be, motivated. Because in the beginning, it's very easy to get motivated from the sobriety changes, right? And you're stacking up time. It's easy to stay motivated. I found in the beginning of my transformation, where, like, when you're really unhealthy and then you get a little healthier, it's easy, like, to lose weight. All of a sudden pounds start falling off, and then you're being active. So that's accelerating, and you're seeing the changes, and you're motivated by it. Then you get to a point where, like, it's about discipline over motivation, because motivation wanes. You
Mm.
can't, that same song that pumps you up doesn't pump you up on the 300th time you've listened
Yeah.
to it. You know what I mean? So, like, you have to
Yeah.
find other things, and I think that's something I've learned over time too. That even through my sobriety, that the initial excitement of it wears off, and it becomes about discipline. And that's the same for a lot of things. That this journey has been long, and there's no like quick fix other than time. Um, there was no, all the things I wanted from going into AA, of not just being sober, but finding success or happiness, or all those things that we want out of life, family and children, and all this good feelings. I wanted them immediately. And I realized quickly that these things take time. And it taught me a
Mm.
lot about patience. And I'm a very impatient person and certainly was back then. And so it taught me a lot about like, the compounding effects of consistent effort over time. And I remind myself to this day, particularly in my training, that not every day needs to be a 10 out of a 10 workout. I'd rather get in there and be consistent than have 3 good workouts a week. I'm like a six day kind of guy, and sometimes
Mm.
there are awesome weeks, and sometimes you're in a deload or you're recovering from something. But I found the consistency over time trumps everything. It's like eating one salad's not going to make you lose weight, and eating
Yeah.
one cheeseburger is not going to make you fat, right? It's the same with workouts. It's that consistency over time, and that takes discipline. And I think discipline is probably for someone like me, a recovering alcoholic, it's one of the hardest things to learn because we didn't have a lot of discipline in our previous life. So it's like starting over to build that foundation. Um, and I think that discipline is something that's learned in AA, which I think helps a lot of people too, is that you have some guardrails to live by. And for many of us, there were no guardrails. We were kind of off the rails. So to come
Mm.
in and have some structure and have some really basic things put in front of you as far as some of the, quintessential kind of mantras and sayings that you see. Um, there's a reason that there's these sayings, easy does it, and things of that nature, where at first you're just kind of like, oh, I'm sick of hearing everybody saying the same little things. And then you realize they're like, oh, there's some simplicity in it, for my alcoholic brain, right? It can't be a complicated process. I need to be able to grab onto some really basic stuff that I can latch onto. And those are like the perfect cues for me at times when I do get overwhelmed or stressed, where you'd want to reach for something to provide that immediate gratification or satisfaction. It's like, this is let's just take a step back. Let's breathe. Let's remember that when we let go and when we remind ourselves that we are not in charge, we can have a much easier time if we follow
Mm.
that path. So for me, it just taught me a different way of thinking and realizing that I wasn't alone and that I wasn't unique in my inability to control those urges as it related to my alcoholism, because it's
Mm.
embarrassing and lonely in that space when you're there. So to not be alone anymore was so helpful to me, which is bizarre because I'm like an introvert. I can be extroverted in a work environment because it's kind of the job, but in general, my cup's not always filled by those things. I'm more of like I like to have my own space, my own routine, in my own kind of world a lot of the time, and so it allowed me to get out of that a little bit, and get out of my own way and help me connect with others that were struggling similar to me. So I didn't feel so alone in it all. And I think that
Mm.
applies a lot to fitness and like the community that you're building and the one we're building here at Mountain Ops is that we create a place for people to not have to be alone going through this. And I think that's one of the biggest things is the isolation, though much of what we do is suffering and isolation in the gym. And it's the work that nobody sees that pays the dividends. But it's nice to know, even with an online community, that there's others that are going through those lonely, cold workouts
Mm.
in their garage, just like you. So like, even
Yeah.
though you're alone, you're still connected in a way.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It makes me think kind of from the context that we all need the components of AA in our life, and that's why they're so effective.
They're
And
so simple, yeah.
yeah, and they're so biblical too. And I think that what I've seen over my journey is that so many of us are chasing affirmation, or we're trying to fill a hole from
Mm.
something that happened in our childhood, and that hole sometimes is filled with alcohol, sometimes it's filled with business pursuits, sometimes it's filled with like aggressive athletic achievements, sometimes it's filled with drugs, sex. It's the same kind of problem, but trying to address that problem in different ways. And when you talk about someone doing push-up in the parking lot waiting for you to go back to that life or waiting for you to screw up.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes me think so much about the Bible talking about the enemy prowling around us 24/7 like a lion looking
Mm-hmm.
for one to still kill, destroy, and devour. And that is exactly what is going on in this unseen realm around us all the time. And so whether you're a recovering alcoholic or not, we still have this enemy prowling around us 24/7. And the principles that are so simple through AA are the principles that we all need, whether we are in AA or not. It's that brotherhood, it's that accountability, the acknowledgement of a higher power, the ability to give up control through the serenity prayer, controlling only the controllables and then not worrying about everything else. The forgiveness piece is massive. I mean, so much of our sin in our lifelong struggle for happiness is tied to people that we never forgave or can't forgive. And it's, AA is kind of working through all of that with you in a very focused manner. And then just seeing the group every night at the meetings, that is such a big thing that's kind of like lost with modern civilization. And it's such a big thing of why men in particular are in this loneliness epidemic. And this loneliness epidemic leads to the substance abuse epidemic, in whether that's drugs or sex or porn or fame or money.
Mm-hmm.
The bowling leagues are gone, the softball leagues are gone. Most of that stuff is really replaced with social media, which is not the same, which is leading to, the acceleration of these problems. And it's cool because Mountain Tough and Mountain Ops, even though we both have our business model based on making a hunter better at hunting, when they go on that big adventure, when they go on that once in a lifetime trip, we want them to thrive.
Yeah.
But 99% of what is going on in the other elements is we want them to have a community. We want them to have accountability. We want them to acknowledge that there's spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, nutritional pillars to their life. We want to help them with discipline. We want them to acknowledge a higher power. It's like all of these things that are so much more important than the actual hunt itself. It's like the journey to the top of that mountain is what's priceless.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's the hard sell, is the journey. Almost whatever it is, until you've experienced that in some way, right? And some people I feel that I've either come across in life or witnessed from afar feed on that journey, right? It's the obstacle is the way, but not everybody's wired that way. And so you have to almost learn that when you identify that the obstacle is the way, and that it's the perseverance through the harder things, and it's not the quick win or the shortcut that's satisfying. And sometimes it's not even the end result that's satisfying. You're right, it's the journey of itself, of getting to the point. And I think when you look at transformation, in particular physical transformation that leads to mental and spiritual transformation, it's this long journey that it's not linear. And I think a lot of people want it to be, just like even like your career. You want it to be like, okay, well, I took a step in the right direction and everything just keeps going that way. And that's not life. I think we learn that there's ups and downs, and there's sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're not sore and you don't have any funky things going on with your knee that day, and you had a good night's rest and you've had adequate caffeine or whatever is getting you going in the morning, and you're ready to rock, and you go have this exciting workout that you're really fired up to go do. But that's not every day. Sometimes it's just part of the process to keep moving one foot in front of the other. And that's hard to do until you either have faith that something positive is going to happen, or you've witnessed it in someone else, or you've witnessed it yourself, that despite a slow journey of one foot in front of the other, the promises are there and they're kept. And I think once you either have the faith that that's going to happen, the belief, like I said, through witnessing it through someone else or having your own experience through it, it's really daunting to go. It's very easy in isolation to go, it's cold today, I'm not going to go and do it. And who's really going to judge me? Right. It's that same kind of thing of like when you remove the ability to be judged, it can be a dangerous place. And it can also be a very supportive place when you don't feel the fear of judgment and you can be honest and open. But generally, when we're in our addictions, and maybe a food addiction or a complacency addiction or a flying under the radar addiction as well, right? Like, it's comfortable to stay there with those things that feed us. And that foot in front of the other, it's slow. I think if you talk to the Keith from 21 years ago and said, okay, well, if you just follow this simple plan and you keep doing it, it's going to take 20 years and then this is where you're going to be. That would have been a tough sell to him then, because he was an impatient guy that wanted it now. So for me, the miracle was in those little wins. And I think that's where, whether it's a sobriety journey or a physical transformation or mental and spiritual, that acknowledging those little wins along the way and knowing that your end result might look differently than what you thought it was going to be when you started. And it is the journey that is the reward in that process, because you learn so much about yourself and others and what you're capable of. And for me, 20 years of sobriety also is 20 years of training. And my training's been up and down over the years. And what the style of training I've done has changed a million times. And I get bit by different fitness bugs and try new things, and I'm all about it because for me, it's whatever keeps me coming back, whatever keeps me engaged and learning. And it got past the point of like, okay, I wanted to lose weight to get to a certain size or look a certain way. And then it transitions to like, well, what am I capable of? Like I found, these athletic pursuits much later in life, I think, than some people. And so for me, it was like, I didn't even know what I was capable of. So then there's this test of will to do the harder workout or some sort of feat that you want to accomplish. And that becomes addicting. And I think that's like what you see in a lot of people that go through recovery, is that they often replace it with, maybe it's working out, maybe it's going into business or starting something. And they put that restlessness into something positive. And that's where the big wins are.
Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food. And they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code MOUNTAINTOUGH, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com. I love that so much because it is funny how our human brains are really interesting, that in this industry we know it really well, that the reason we want to go climb that mountain and put on a pack and explore these unknown territories, all these reasons that make hunting so attractive and so rewarding and so therapeutic, are the opposite of comfort. It's funny because like a late season nasty mountain hunt, if you backpack in, spend like 7 days looking for a bull elk, and you kill that bull elk on day 7, you have the nasty pack out, you're suffering with some buddies. It's things like this that we're just like desiring in our heart to do more of. And the reason that we're desiring to do more of that type of thing is the adventure. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what is around the next corner. You don't know what the weather's going to do, what the snow's going to do. You don't know in Montana what the grizzly bears are going to do.
Right.
Those elements are brewing, and then a lot of the time you're with a really good buddy or two really good buddies, and so you have the brotherhood thing brewing there, and then you have a lot of struggle. You have so much adversity to reach any kind of success, and so you're struggling in the unknown with some community, and it's really, really hard, and you love it so much, and it's the opposite of comfort. And then we get back home in our normal bubble, and we just start pursuing comfort again. And it's funny that that's the way the human brain works, is the things that we enjoy the most, we know these principles exist in them, and then we can kind of get back into our ordinary lifestyle and push out the things that are scary, push out the things that have struggle, push out the things that are outside of our comfort zone. And then we start getting depressed and full of anxiety and pursuing substances. It's really interesting that those two dynamics exist.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be aware of those cycles too. You know, like one is the success nearly as sweet without the struggle? I'd say no. I think you can point to a lot of different examples in life where even if you ended up with the same winning results, if you didn't have the same level of effort required to achieve it, is your perceived satisfaction as high? And generally it's not. You know, everybody loves a quick win once in a while, but generally it's not going to have the same kind of deep response of satisfaction within. And I think like with anything, there is some seasonality to our level of, I don't know if it's effort or engagement or enthusiasm or motivation, right? Like it goes like this. I find that with myself where, you know, when something's new or you're gearing up for something, you can be really excited and you can have that momentum that's building. And I've done this quite a few times, particularly with like a diet regimen or even a training protocol, where when I hit that sweet spot where I'm like, man, I don't know why I wouldn't do it exactly like this every day for the rest of my life. Like my meals are dialed, my training's dialed, and this and that. And inevitably there'll either be a curveball of life that just happens where it kind of takes you a little bit out of that groove, or there's just like kind of like a natural cycle of needing to kind of pull it down a notch. Like you can't always run at a 10. And I think what's really important is to be
Mm.
okay with that. Cause I find personally when I feel myself needing to go into that lower kind of energy zone, maybe my workouts aren't quite as intense, whether it's related to some sort of discomfort or injury I'm facing. And that can almost be like depressing, like, man, I'm not making more progress towards my goals. But I've learned over time that like it's okay to be in that space for a period of time, but it has to be
Mm.
defined how long I'm going to allow myself to be in there before we got to kick it back up again. Because sometimes you have to listen to those things in your body that are saying like, hey, we need to slow down just a little bit. Sometimes mentally you need that. I think it's important to put the discipline over that, to give yourself a moment to catch your breath. But you're right. If you stay in there too long, we love like that dopamine response of staying on the couch. Like it invites you in, but then it kind of traps you there. And then it's hard to get out of that comfort zone again. And then I find like if I don't train for 2 days in a row, like that third day, like I'm nasty. That's not someone you want to be around. Like
Yeah.
mentally, I need that. So if you kind of fall out of it and you're staying in the comfort of your home and you're not pushing yourself to do uncomfortable things and you're not reaching for anything, you get comfortable and then it becomes like harder to even take action because you're all the inertia is gone. You know what I mean? Like you're in the mud now. And so now you got to
Mm.
dig out. So I think it's important to allow some space for recovery and time to take some of the pressure off of yourself and listen to the signals that you're getting. But yeah, man, I know I have to put a time limit on it. So I know it's like it's time to go again and shake it up. And maybe that means my training needs like a new goal or a new approach to get to that goal. Maybe my diet needs to go through some, revamp where I just got to change up the routine of it. And then I find myself enthusiastic again, and then we're right back where I want to be. So it's
Mm.
critical to get out of that hole. You don't want to stay there too long because that dopamine is very addictive in itself, and you'll just keep pushing that button, to stay
Yeah.
stay comfy, warm, and happy. You forget how much happiness you had through the suffering. Suffering sounds tough when you're on the couch.
I know. It's really wild. And as you were talking, it makes me think that like everything you've been through from the recovery journey and the fitness journey and the transformation journey, it's cool to see it now, just like from listening to you chat right there, like everything that you went through related to those three things really made you able and open and eligible and skilled for this Mountain Ops CEO job. Like that
Yeah,
journey at the time, there's no way you could see it, but it made you who you are today. And who you are today, that
yeah. It's
wiring and those skills, like it created you for that job. It's cool.
it's all these little things, and because I've had these conversations with people where they, maybe someone just getting out of school, and it's like, well, what should I do? How do I get to where you are? I like what you're doing. That seems awesome. And it's like, man, there's a million little things that went right and a million that went wrong, and it just was like I guess, a discipline involved to get there and being open minded and willing to take risks and uh, I don't know. It's so many things, but you're right. If you had asked me on my first day in a meeting where I was just trying to take a step in the right direction, if you could let me see a little glimpse of what's going on now and the unique opportunity I have to be involved with such an incredible organization like Mountain Ops, I like wouldn't have believed it. And if you told me
Mm.
all the things that would have had to happen so perfectly for it all to happen, it would have seemed impossible. Yet here I am, right? And so that miracle is not lost on me. And I think that's another thing that keeps me motivated and keeps me sober is that like, gosh, we're here. Like there's so
Mm.
much to lose now. And for me, that guy in the parking lot, he just wants that chance to watch it all go away. And so that really, I don't know, scares me into staying on the line a little bit. But um, it has been a wild ride of being really lucky in a lot of ways. I've been surrounded by really talented people along the way that have taught me a lot and motivated me both in business and in the gym, and just on how to be a better human, and help support me through those highs and lows. So it was getting a million things right. But I think for me, I always had this. I still have it. It's like something in my brain, and I've gone to a lot of therapy sessions to try to unpack this busy brain of mine and what to do about it,
Mm.
and how to. It's almost in this effort to control it, because I can find myself, I spin out on things. I'll just latch on, and I try to be a problem solver. So for me, I'm thinking about what are the 10 things that could go wrong, and what are the 10 ways I can help kind of alleviate those problems or solve those problems, and thinking about conversations. Well, if this goes this way, I'll do this, so I'm playing out stuff in my brain 24 hours a day. Like my wife will be like, "You're quiet over there. Are you creating problems that don't exist and now trying to figure out how to solve them?" And I'm like, "Ooh, I guess, yeah, I think so." And it's like, I think it's part of the thing that drives me crazy about myself, but it's probably also one of the things that's helped me be relatively successful. It's like that brain just doesn't kind of stop. And so the key is, where are you going to put all that restless mental energy? Um,
Mm.
and for me, like, it was like, okay, it's noisy, it's uncomfortable. And if I let it spin out of control, it doesn't take me to a good place. So it needs discipline to be trained, just like our bodies do. And I've found that to be the hardest. Put me in the gym and say, we want to go increase our bench by this much, or I want to be able to try this new sport, or I want to learn how to, become a better runner. And, I've done so many of those things. And it's like, okay, I understand you put in that hard work, but the mental piece of it is something I still work on,
Yeah.
struggle with to this day. Like, I would
Mm.
say 99% of the content I consume from audiobooks and podcasts and physical books has to do with sharpening that mental edge. And I still feel so uh, early in that journey, but it's like something I've
Mm.
been doing for so long. I think that's nutrition, the physical part, being successful in business, like, those are almost easy compared to mastering your mind. I feel like, and that is like the big unlock. If you can find how to really control um, the different voices and noise, and understanding how to sift through that noise and be productive with all that mental energy, I feel like that's the big unlock.
It's
And I'm still
huge.
working on that to this day. So if you have any tips for me, I'll certainly take them.
It's huge. It's just like emotions are so helpful, but such terrible leaders. And it's
Mm,
common for us to let them be leaders. That the mental component is definitely the hardest one for me as well. And it just made me think that it's only really built through extreme struggle, and mental toughness has a very strong connection to the spiritual pillar of your life. And so we actually just had a gentleman on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. He's 83, and he's been in the study of mental toughness game for 50 years. He created a Human Performance Institute funded by Johnson and Johnson. His name is Dr. Jim Lohr, and they studied 250,000 Olympians, professional athletes, professional fighters, and the results were not what he thought they were going to be, but the final results of the study of 250,000 elite performers were that the most mentally tough had a spiritual connection. And it kind of blew his mind, because he was not expecting that to be the result of the study. And I think that we chatted about that a lot on the Mountain Tough podcast last year with several guests. Is mental toughness with no spiritual connection, in my mind, is different than mental toughness with a spiritual connection. Because, like, as a Christian, for example, if I know that we've already won the battle, and if I know where I'm going in the end,
mhm.
that's a complete mental game changer on what I'm willing to endure and what I'm willing to risk in the pursuit of that endeavor. For more than a century, America's sportsmen and women have led the way in paying for the restoration of wildlife, conserving habitat, and investing in the future of our natural world. This is a legacy built not on what we take ourselves, but on what we give back. That's the nature of conservation, paying it forward for the next generation. This is the reason Mountain Tough is a proud partner of Wild Sheep Foundation, an organization committed to keeping and putting wild sheep on the mountain. If you're not already a member, learn more today at wildsheepfoundation.org.
It closes the gap. It's the ambiguity. Like, that's where I've struggled so much with my mental toughness, is when there's a lot of ambiguity. And you mentioned emotions before, and I think as a man growing up, in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't like, emotions isn't something you talked about, or how to manage emotions as a young man. And so mental toughness, like, my first reaction to that is like almost like a hardening of this barrier between you and your emotions, versus having the toolkit to actually deal with them, and allow them to come in. And how do you hold on or let go of them and process them? How do you allow or not allow them to influence your decision making or your actions? And I think when you introduce a spiritual component in the concept of faith, you remove the ambiguity in a lot of ways, because you fill the ambiguity with faith and confidence now. So you don't have this uncertainty, to your point, when you're bought in and you know where you're going and you're committed and you're doing the work and will continue to do the work because you know why it's important. You remove a big component that ambiguity replaces for a lot of other people, where it's this unknown. And I think, for someone like myself, that ambiguity was replaced with numbness from alcohol. And when you replace that with faith in a higher power, all of a sudden I have trust in something else to be able to go like, what? I don't have to worry about that piece. That's being handled by something far more important than I. And as long as I just stay the course, I feel confident knowing how this will shake out. And even if it's not exactly how I planned, because it's not my plan, and I'm okay with that and I'm comfortable with that, and I lean on that, I can put my attention elsewhere. And it's the emotional piece, I think, is a huge one, especially for men. I think just learning how to process that, handle that, and use it in a constructive way, I feel like, is a conversation that is far more recent in its starting than it's been for a lot of men growing up. So I'm glad we're having these conversations and figuring these things out together, and giving people a chance to learn from the experience, strength, and hope of others that have gone through similar type situations, whether it's about sobriety or anything for that matter. I think men are having conversations that they didn't have 10 years ago,
Yeah, I agree. And it's so critical. It's so critical to chat about those things. Even the example that you hear most common is the example that you went through of I was trying to fill a hole, and I was trying to fill a hole, and so I went to alcohol and alcoholism. If some of those kind of discussions were had more of like, what is that emotion you're feeling related to that potential hole that you're talking about, the more that we can have those discussions early on, the healthier that we're going to be. And it doesn't make us mentally weaker. It just changes the dynamic of how we improve our mental toughness by improving our awareness around those things. It's cool that God always has like the end version of us in mind. And so in our current like day-to-day struggle, they can feel really heavy and difficult to navigate through emotionally. But like God in his seat, he sees the final version of us, not today's version. And having you on the show today and hearing that story from childhood to now, is such a good example of that. And you're going to continue to go and transform even more than you are today. But there's a story around when Michelangelo created this very detailed statue of David out of a block of marble. It's like incredibly beautiful, and it started with this just big rectangle block, and he transformed it into a statue of David. And they asked him, like, how did you do that? How did you pick that block? How did you create David out of that block of marble? And he said, all I did is just remove the pieces that weren't David. And hearing you talk today and hearing your story and seeing where you're at now gave me a good glimpse of that. It's like God's just removing pieces of us that aren't the version of us he wants to see at the end. And the removal of that block is going to require some pain and some suffering. But he's just chiseling away, not chiseling us, but chiseling off the pieces that he doesn't want to be us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's strength in letting go of those pieces. That's the hard part in a lot of ways, and I think especially when we're talking about the mental pieces and the emotional baggage that we need to let go of, I find one of the easiest ways to address that is to do something really hard. Like if you're having, if you're in an emotional state that you don't want to be in or you need to move on from, there's almost no faster way than putting yourself through a grueling session of suffering. It's amazing, not just from the endorphins and everything else, but like the clarity that comes from that. Even in a short period of a 45-minute workout, you can be on the other side of something so much quicker. And I think for a lot of people, the lack of understanding how a little bit of suffering can cause so much healing that you didn't expect is something I wish more people knew about. Because I think once you understand that, it really does change on how you process things and handle things and what you need to do to keep yourself capable of processing these feelings and emotions and these thoughts that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. And you can bolster that with the belief in a higher power and something that you can constantly lean on. I think gives you a good tool set to be able to handle nearly anything that's going to come your way. And we always, have more to learn, and we'll be tested in ways that we can't even imagine in today's world that we're living in. There's usually something else that's coming, and there's so much to learn from all that. Even in those hard parts, we learn about ourselves. We learn a lot about others, and then when you get kind of brought back around to face something again, you kind of have that armor built up. You're like, all right, we've been here. I know I can get through this. I have something I can fight back with, and I think for me, as someone that went through that program and got out somewhat on the other side of it, right, it's like you didn't have those tools going into it. And that's what's great about a program like AA and getting connected with other like-minded individuals, even as it relates to transformations and just personal development. Those tools matter so much, and we can't expect everybody to have those tools if they've never been exposed to them. So I love what you guys are doing, and I love what we're doing at Mountain Ops to give people the opportunity to have some of those tools in their toolkit that they might not have had before. Because then you can see the path, but without that, it's intimidating.
For sure. Well, Keith, we are out of time. That was a fast hour. I had no idea it flew by that fast, but I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you coming on, and appreciate you being transparent and vulnerable and open about your story. And I know that that'll help a lot of individuals, a lot of men, a lot of listeners as we're all kind of going through these battles. And I'm excited for you, man. Excited to see what Mountain Ops is up to over the next few years, with you leading the charge. And I can't wait to see you guys change more lives.
Yeah, that's the exciting part. I love what we do, helping people on their journey, and we're cooking up some exciting things. And We have a really sharp team, and I know you've met a bunch, and the enthusiasm for Mountain Ops and what we stand for and our core values and what we live to do. You feel it through everybody in the organization. So we have an awesome team that's ready to tackle all the exciting stuff that we're putting together, and I'm really grateful for our partnership with Mountain Tough, and I really appreciated the conversation today, and I look forward to where we're going together in the future. So we should sit back and do this again at a later date and see where the journey is taking us.
For sure. Awesome. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thank you so much.
What a phenomenal conversation with Keith. I definitely could have chatted with Keith for a couple more hours. I love hearing that sobriety recovery story and seeing what he's doing now. Remember, every single Mountain Tough episode, we're looking for that golden nugget. What can we apply to our lives now that's going to practically make a difference on that mindset, on that mental toughness, on that mental health? The big one for me, for sure, from Keith was he talked about you got to always be tweaking, trying new things as you go through these roller coaster of life seasons and energy in life going high and low. That's been a big thing for me as well. When my fitness gets boring, when my nutrition gets boring, when it's getting dull and you don't have that edge to get into the gym, if your feet don't roll out of bed at 5 a.m, it's time to switch things up. So just like Keith, I do the same thing. I try a new fitness sport. I try a new fitness challenge from marathons, ultra marathons, high rocks, always changing it a little bit so that you can push your mind, push your body. And when you make that change and sign up for something big, that's when all of that discipline becomes much, much easier because you're excited and you feel that pressure of the new thing. So try that if you are in that rut. Love you guys, and we will see you on the next episode.